This lesson is about how to develop a simple composition still life drawing. The first part, we're going to go through the steps of designing the drawing nicely. And what we need to do when we're designing the drawing, we need to consider a nice balance between the surrounding space and the objects themselves. And so let's take a look here. Now, we're going to need a yardstick, your hard, medium, and soft pencils, and a kneaded eraser. Okay, and I like to start with my hard pencil, okay, so as to keep the design part of the drawing nice and light, okay, so as not to overpower the drawing itself once we get going, okay. So the first thing I want to do is I want to locate my master cube, right, to get a sense of the space that these objects are going to appear in, okay. So the perimeter line first, okay. And I want to keep, again, I want to keep everything nice and square to the page, okay. I'm going to put my back plane of the master cube a little higher. Okay, and again, this is to help us visualize the space that the objects are going to be situated in. In this case, we have three nice fruits. Okay. And the master cube is essentially a volume of space, right? Okay, and so we can see how the space is moving towards us like this, right? Okay. So the first thing we do is we'll look at the characteristics of these objects. They're fairly symmetrical, right? So they all have a footprint, right, and a center axis, okay? And we're kind of looking down at the objects a little bit, right? So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to locate the pear, which is a little bit closer to us. You see the way that apple's sort of a little bit back and this one comes down, right? So the first thing I want to do is to locate the pear, and I'm going to visualize the footprint right about there, and that's where the pear is going to go, right? And so I can go around the volume, right? So this establishes the descriptive dominant direction, okay? And right, so that's where our pear is, right? And we have to remember that our line of our light source is coming from the left to right, okay? See the way the shadows are indicating that, okay? And you can see the bright highlight areas of the objects. They're on the left side, so the light's coming from left to right. Okay, so now I'm going to situate the apple, which is a little bit further back, right, over here, and the footprint of the apple is here. And I'm making the objects nice and big, right, so that we have an interesting balance between the surrounding space and the objects themselves. So there's the apple, the yellow apple, and then this one's a little bit closer to us. So we're gonna put this apple like right over here, and it's kind of like there's a little bit of a movement there on the apple. So the footprint is right about there, right? This apple's a little narrower towards the bottom, and then it kind of, okay. All right, and so here we've situated the objects. They're nice and large, okay? And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to locate those shadow areas, okay? And so since the light is coming from the left side, the shadows are going to the right side. So you notice how the shadows encompass, right, the volume of the object itself, right? So I'm going to, and look at that. The shadow has the shape of the pear, kind of a thing, right? Something like that. Okay. All right. And this shadow is nice and long. Creates a little bit of drama. Okay. So here we have the design of the page. And so the space is moving towards us like this, right? And this shows us the direction, the dominant descriptive direction, okay? It's going around the object. And we employ that strategy to enhance and maximize the visual impact of the illusion, right? So the lines become relative, okay? And so that part takes care of the design. Now the next part is to add the values into the drawing, right? And so what you want to do is you want to make sure the drawing is designed nicely before you start spending all the time on developing the values, okay? So I'm going to start with my medium pencil in developing these values. And so the light is along, right, this sharp edge here. The light is at the top of the objects, right? So we're going to be putting this value up to the edge of the objects, right? Right? We're not drawing any contour lines or anything like that. So we begin to develop and draw up to the edge of the light. Okay. We always work from light to dark. And I'm including the shadow area because we're still working within that value. I'm following the space of the volume here, right? The cloth is kind of moving this way in this direction. This is the dominant direction, and I'm going to change the angles ever so slightly to create a smooth effect. The cloth is soft, so we want to work towards a smooth graphic with the pencil, right? We don't want to get apply this part with any kind of strong lines. It's a soft material, so we want to imitate the feel of that. Right, so we're isolating the objects. And so now you're starting to see the objects appearing, right, in dimension. And you want to pull these values away from the objects so that the objects have a presence and you're able to have enough room to show the shadow. The shadows always, they support the objects. The shadow adds to the drama. So see how I'm actually working on the surrounding value, right, which is going to support these light areas, right? It's bright along that edge because it's dark there. So that's the strategy, that's the approach. And so we need to sharpen the pencil a little bit, right? There's a little bit of there's a perforation there that you want to stay on to expose the pencil. There you go. And I like to keep about 1/2 inch exposed, okay? And I'm keeping the angle of the pencil low so as to get a maximum coverage. And I'm just gliding the pencil on the page, right? Aiming for the hot spots, trying to create a smooth effect since the cloth is quite smooth, so that's the effect we want to recreate. Okay. I'm following the dominant direction of the space with my lines. Right? The material is coming towards us like that. I'm still working with my medium pencil. I am looking at the values. I'm looking at the transition of the light areas and the dark areas, right, where they are. So let's look at the yellow apple, right? So the transition area is right here, and this is my dominant descriptive direction of the line. Okay, I'm still working light to dark, so I'm working light here, right? And there's that, it's a soft edge, that transition, right? And so I'm going to just indicate where that little gully is. Okay, where the stem comes out of. Okay. And now let's look at the pear. It's kind of bright here. And there's a transition on the shape of this thing, right? So it's like right around, something right around like that, right? So there we go. And we don't use any contour lines because that kind of chokes the air out of the drawing, right? This is the approach, right? We draw up to the values. And we can indicate the stem here, which is kind of interesting. It's a long stem, right? We can exaggerate this one a little bit, right? Okay, and so now we've sort of delineated the transition areas, right? And now I'm going to go in and deepen the shadow area. Okay, and I'm following the direction of the substrate there. If you change the direction radically, the shadow will separate itself from that substrate. So you want to make it feel like it's the same substrate. So you graphically follow it. You handle it the same way. Right, and we don't want to overcommit our values. I'm still nice and light, right? Okay, so now let's locate that shadow under the yellow apple, right? And again, I'm following the direction of the surface. And I can see my line where I delineated where the shadow area is falling. Okay. Notice I'm always looking at my reference, right? And now you start seeing the drawing coming to life. Really nice, beautiful, right? So let's put the shadow area under this apple. And again, notice we didn't do any contour line except for going around the volume of the object, right? So we were just adding the values. And we can see that shadow is nice and long here. Okay, beautiful, look at that. The drawing has come to life. Now the application of the values going forward are going to really add to the drama. And so what am I looking for? I'm looking to sharpen the drawing now. So see how those transitions are nice and sharp. The light is is hitting the object, and the parts that's closest to the light is sharp, and see how these sort of fall away more, okay, those edges, right? So we want to make a sharp distinction, right? And again, you have to constantly observe your values, right? Not to overcommit them. So I'm back working on the background, right? To create that contrast from here to here, right? So you can see how that part is very dark. And in general, since the light source is coming from the left side, the image is going to be light to dark, right? So lighter here, darker to the right. Smoothing things out, aiming for the hot spots, always. And this area is going to eventually get really dark because it's furthest from the light. It's going to add the drama to the drawing. Okay. So you can see how the drawing is starting to sharpen up. Slowly. We got a ways to go. Right? Notice how it's brighter in the front here where the light's hitting it and darker back there. Okay. Now, even as dark as this is, there's still the object in the shadow area is a little darker, so I can start to put that in. Okay. Notice I'm following the descriptive direction. Change the direction ever so slightly. I'm still following. See how I'm following the surface of the object, right? And there's some value here, right? But this is darker, right? So you can see how there's a long way to go here. And you can see that shadow core that we studied, right? There's definitely a darker area right there. And look at the reflected light from this yellow apple on that pear edge, right? There's some of that green there, reflected light. And look at the reflected light here on the yellow apple, and the shadow core is there, right? So all that needs to be imitated, right? And I'm still working nice and light. Nice and light. Going around the object to maximize the illusion. All these line directions have meaning and they support the description of the objects. And I'm still working, very light. Haven't made any commitments to dark yet. And that'll be at the end. Even on that edge, I'm turning the shape here, creating that round edge. See, that's nicely appearing there, right? And I can see that my shadow area for my pear is a little bit small, right? So I got to bring it out. And the shadow area reflects the shape of the object itself, right? So and you can see a slight shadow from the stem. Right, and this area comes out a little bit more. It's the belly of the pear. Right. Okay, and so we're just keep adding the values. And notice how I'm working and doing the whole drawing at once. And you can see how that angle on my pencil is nicely developed. And I'm taking advantage of that to create that smooth area. Right? I'm going around the object. This part's coming towards us. Goes around, back to the other side. Closest to the light. Let's define this a little bit more. Okay, so here we have the drawing is starting to appear very nicely, and it's going to take quite a bit of work going forward, okay, in finishing this drawing.